Your childhood trauma doesn't clock out when the workday starts. It reads your boss's email and decides you're being criticized. It answers your mother's text from the part of you that's still 10 years old. It sits across from a promising first date and starts rehearsing the loss before anything has even gone wrong. This isn't about romantic relationships. How childhood trauma affects all your relationships, work, family, friendship, dating, is the question nobody's asking. And it's the reason that half your triggers are happening in rooms that have nothing to do with love. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one pattern is running every hard moment across your life, not just the relationship ones. And you'll have a portable repair sequence you can adapt to any room you walk into. Not a different tool for every context. One tool that travels. Let me introduce you to Keisha. Keisha is a 40-year-old attorney. She's sharp, experienced, and if you asked her, she'd tell you she's been doing the work. She knows her attachment patterns, she's read the books, she can name what a trigger feels like in her body. And she's still getting taken out 4 times in 1 week, 4 completely different settings, same exact internal collapse. Monday morning, her boss sends a single email. Can you come by at 10? I want to tighten the memo before it goes to the client. That's it. No threat, no accusation, standard feedback request. By 9:10, she has reopened the memo 4 times and started pre-apologizing in her head. Her stomach has dropped, her shoulders have climbed to her ears, and her mind is already running the old translation. You missed something obvious. He's going to see you're not as good as he thought. Tuesday, her mother texts, can you come Sunday? Your brother's kids might be late and I could really use help with lunch. Keisha is already stretched thin. She promised herself Sunday was protected. Her actual answer is no. What comes out instead is guilt. The old role arrives instantly. Reliable daughter, smoother of logistics, the person who steps in before anyone else has to feel inconvenience. Wednesday, a promising second date ends pleasantly. Walk to the train is fine, kiss goodnight is easy. Then the silence starts. By noon Thursday, Oliver still hasn't texted. Keisha tells herself she's too old for this. Then she drafts 3 versions of a casual, cool, not at all anxious message and deletes every one. Friday afternoon, her close friend cancels dinner. Second time in 3 weeks. I'm slammed, rain check. Keisha writes back, no worries, because that's what the polished version of her says. Then she spends 2 hours hurt and angry, not just because plans changed, because she's been the one carrying the whole friendship for months, and she keeps refusing to name that directly. 4 different settings, 4 completely different social rules, 4 completely different surface problems. 1 body story. 1 old pattern, don't be difficult, don't need too much, don't disappoint anyone, overperform, overthink, clean up the discomfort privately. Here's what most self-work gets wrong. It treats each of those situations like a separate personality flaw. At work, you call it perfectionism. With family, you call it guilt. In dating, you call it anxious attachment. In friendship, you call it being too sensitive. And because each one has a different label, you think you have 4 separate problems. You don't. The cue changes, the story underneath does not. There's a concept from rejection sensitivity research that explains this clearly, and I'll bring it back in a minute because it's the key to understanding why these 4 different rooms all feel like the same emergency. But first, I want to show you something about where the labels come from. When you grew up in an environment where your needs were unpredictable, where love felt conditional, where being too much meant losing safety, your nervous system learned a translation system. Ambiguity means threat. Criticism means exposure. Silence means rejection. That translation system was survival logic when you were small. It made sense. If disappointing a parent meant withdrawal, coldness, or anger, then scanning every interaction for signs of disappointment was intelligent. It kept you safe. The problem is, your nervous system never got the memo that you're not small anymore. It's still running the same software. In the boss's office, on your phone with your mother, on a train platform after a date. The bruise isn't, "I'm bad at life." The bruise is more specific. I may disappoint someone and lose safety. Now here's that concept I mentioned. Psychologists Geraldine Downey and Scott Feldman developed something called the rejection sensitivity model. The idea is straightforward. Some people have a general tendency to anxiously expect rejection and to perceive and react to it faster than others. What's important for you isn't the clinical name. What's important is this: it doesn't live only in your romantic relationships. A boss's neutral email hits the same bruise as a partner's cold tone. A parent's guilt trip hits the same bruise as a friend's canceled plans. The bruise is the same, only the room has changed. And here's what that means practically. Once you understand that one pattern is running all four contexts, you stop needing 4 different therapies, 4 different frameworks, 4 different versions of yourself. You need one repair sequence that you can carry into every room. That's what the Reparenting Repair Path is built for. And the second half of this video is about how to actually use it, work, family, dating, and friendship, with the specific wording that fits each context. Let's start with work, because work triggers are the easiest to dismiss. You're not crying in a parking lot, you're revising the slide deck for the 11th time. You're answering emails too fast so no one can call you sloppy. You're arriving at a meeting already apologizing before you even know what the problem is. That's Keisha at 10 a.m. on Monday. She walks into her boss's office pre-collapsed, pre-defending, pre-sorry. Her old move, absorb the criticism, read everything personally, overfit the revision to whatever she imagines he wanted. Her repaired move is a single question. She says, "I want to make this revision accurately. Which 2 changes matter most for the client?" That one sentence does 3 things at once. It interrupts the panic spiral. It turns criticism terror into information gathering. And it cuts the chance that she spends 3 hours fixing the wrong thing. Other work phrases that hold the same sequence. I can revise this today. Which section is the priority? Can you show me one example of the level you're after so I can match it? I need a minute to think before I answer that well. That last one matters more than it looks. Readers with self-abandonment patterns donate their clarity at work by answering too fast. Delay isn't incompetence. Sometimes it's how you keep your adult judgment online. Now, family. Because family triggers feel the most disproportionate. And there's a reason for that. When your mother texts, you're not only answering your mother. You're answering from the part of you trained to be the peacekeeper. The responsible one, the person who steps in before anyone else has to feel inconvenience. The current topic might be Sunday lunch. Your nervous system is reading it as rank, duty, guilt, and safety. That's why family conversations can feel so childish, even when everyone involved is middle-aged. Keisha's old move with her mother, instant compliance followed by quiet resentment. Her repaired move is slower and more exact. She texts back, "I can come from 1 to 3, I'm not available to set up the whole day." When her mother replies, "I was really hoping you could come earlier," Keisha doesn't produce a guilt-soothing essay. She repeats, "I can do 1 to 3, I've oh." That's not harsh, that's adult. The internal question that makes family repair possible is this: is this a present-day compromise? Or am I obeying an old role automatically? If the answer is old role, slow down before you answer. Dating is its own kind of activating. And here's why. In a long-term relationship, you have a file on the other person. Evidence, History, context. In early dating, the file is thin. That gives your old fears a lot of blank space to write on. A delayed text becomes a referendum on your worth. An inconsistent plan becomes a riddle you have to solve. Chemistry becomes proof of imagined safety. And silence becomes instruction to chase, to protest, or to pre-abandon yourself before you can be left. Keisha's old move after the date with Oliver: draft 3 casual messages, delete all of them, then spend 48 hours in a private spiral of analysis. Her repaired move is a sequence, not suppression. First, she notices the cue. No follow-up text by midday. Second, she regulates enough not to send from urgency. Third, she names the need accurately, not please like me, just information. Fourth, she makes a clean bid if she still wants to. I had a good time. If you want to do this again, I'm glad to make a plan. That sentence doesn't guarantee the answer she wants, but it protects her from building a 3-day inner drama around a question she could have asked directly. Friendship triggers are the quietest ones, and because they're quiet, they're easy to minimize. No dramatic breakup, no official label, just repeated asymmetry. You initiate more, you remember more, you carry the emotional detail. Plans change and you say, no worries, because that's what the mature version of you does. Then one small cancellation hits harder than it should, and you feel embarrassed by how much it matters. If you've been trained to keep closeness by overgiving, friendship can become a very quiet place to abandon yourself. Keisha finally names it when Lena cancels dinner again. Her polished move, write, no worries, then carry the resentment privately. Her repaired move is a direct question. She writes, I'm not upset that this week is bad. I do want to name that I've been the one initiating for a while, and I'm starting to feel unsure where I stand. Do you want to keep making plans, or are you too stretched right now? That sentence isn't dramatic. It isn't clingy. It's information seeking with self-respect intact. Friendship repair is usually less about one confrontation. It's about ending the silent scorekeeping you've been doing alone. If you're carrying the whole friendship in your head, name that fact sooner, not to punish, to find out what's actually true. There's one more thing that makes all of this harder, and most people never name it: spillover. A hard feedback meeting at 4 p.m. becomes edge at 6 p.m. A tense call with your mother makes your partner's practical questions sound like an accusation. A disappointing date makes a friend's late reply feel like a second rejection. You're not in 2 different rooms. Your body thinks it's still in the first one. Keisha feels it on a Wednesday after a brutal memo review. She gets home. Malik asks about calling the landlord about a leak. He means plumbing. She hears evaluation. This time, she catches it before she answers. She runs 3 fast checks in the hallway. What am I carrying? What story is already loading? What does this room actually need? Answers, criticism, heat. The urge to defend, one practical conversation. She drops her shoulders, one longer exhale, hand on the cool wall. I forgot. I can call now, but give me a minute because work is still all over me. That's the transition reset, not a ritual, a clean handoff. You name the residue before it becomes the tone. Here's what to do this week. Choose the 3 settings that most reliably knock you out of yourself. Not relationships as a category, the real specific places: work feedback, family requests, dating ambiguity, friendship cancellations, household planning. For each one, write 5 short entries on a single page. 1, the predictable cue, not in the abstract, the actual thing, a calendar invite with no context, a guilt text from mom, a delayed reply from someone you like. 2, the immediate story, what your mind says the moment it lands: I'm in trouble, I disappointed them, I'm not enough. 3, the first regulating move, 1 breath, feet on the floor. Write the actual task before reacting. something physical and short. 4. The need underneath. Not global reassurance, something narrower. Information, steadiness, a cleaner plan. Permission to say no. 5. One sentence that fits that setting. Work. Which 2 revisions matter most? Family. I can do 1 to 3, not the whole day. Dating. If you want to see me again, I'm open to making a plan. Friendship. Do you want to keep making plans, or are you too stretched right now? Then add 1 transition reset between the 2 settings that bleed into each other most often. Maybe work into home, maybe family into partnership, maybe dating disappointment into friendship withdrawal. Keep it short enough that you'll actually use it. 1 pattern, 5 contexts, 1 repair sequence. If the reparenting repair path only works in 1 relationship, it's still too fragile for real life. If you've noticed this, if your workplace perfectionism and your family guilt and your dating anxiety all trace back to the same bruise, type 1 pattern in the comments. It matters that you name it, not because it fixes everything, because naming the through line is how you stop treating yourself like you have 4 separate problems. Subscribe if you want a practical tool for this every week. Next video is about what to do when you slip back into the old pattern after a hard week. Because you will. And knowing what to do after is the part nobody talks about. And if you want the full Reparenting Repair Path across all 8 chapters, the book is in the description. It's everything this channel is built on. You're not doing this wrong. You're doing something that was never modeled for you. That's different.